Homeless girl sleeps in a box, asks a billionaire to protect her friend. His reaction stuns all. Why would a homeless girl, found shivering in a box with her baby brother, ask a billionaire to protect him instead of herself? Prepare for the stunning truth about their dangerous father, who deliberately abandoned them to hide his links to a notorious crime syndicate, only to demand them back later. Like, subscribe, and listen now to hear the shocking story of rescue, redemption, and how one plea changed everything. The sleek, black sedan whispered through the rain-slicked alley, its powerful engine a muted contrast to the harsh city sounds distant sirens, overflowing dumpsters, the lonely echo of Nathan Caldwell's thoughts. He usually avoided these shortcuts through Philadelphia's grittier veins, preferring the clean, anonymous efficiency of the main thoroughfares. But tonight, a detour, a restless urge to escape the sterile silence of his penthouse, had led him here. His headlights sliced through the gloom, illuminating overflowing bins and graffiti-scarred brick walls. Then they caught something else. A large cardboard box, wedged between a dumpster and a loading dock, visibly trembled. Nathan slowed, frowning. Rats? Stray cats? Curiosity, an emotion he rarely indulged, warred with caution. He stopped the car, the engine humming almost silently. He watched for a moment. The box shivered again, accompanied by a faint, muffled whimper. Not an animal. With a sigh that fogged the expensive leather interior, Nathan got out, pulling his tailored overcoat tighter against the damp chill. He approached the box hesitantly, the sound of his own footsteps echoing unervingly in the narrow space. He reached down, gently lifting the soggy cardboard flap. His breath caught in his throat. Inside, huddled together for warmth, were two children. A girl, perhaps 12, with tangled hair and startlingly intelligent eyes that met his with a mixture of fear and fierce defiance. She held, protectively cradled against her chest, a tiny infant wrapped in a thin, dirty blanket. The baby whimpered again, nuzzling against the girl's ragged jacket. The girl flinched at Nathan's presence, but didn't cry out. Instead, she tightened her grip on the infant, looked directly into Nathan's eyes, and spoke, her voice raspy but clear, utterly devoid of self-pity. "I don't need anything from me, mister," she whispered, her small body trembling from cold or fear or both. "But please, protect Rowan. He's my best friend. Please keep him safe." The raw selflessness of her plea, the fierce maternal instinct radiating from this child barely older than a child herself, struck Nathan Caldwell, the detached billionaire, with the force of a physical blow, shattering the carefully constructed indifference he wore like armor. He stared at them, speechless, profoundly stunned. Nathan Caldwell, 40, was the architect of his own gilded cage. As chairman and CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, a multifaceted financial empire headquartered in Philadelphia, he wielded immense power and influence. His days were a meticulously scheduled whirlwind of board meetings, market analyses, and high-stakes negotiations, conducted from an Eames chair in a minimalist office overlooking the city skyline. He was brilliant, driven, and commanded respect, even fear, in the ruthless world of high finance. But the Patek Philippe on his wrist ticked away hours in a life marked by profound personal isolation. Years ago, a devastating personal loss, the death of his younger sister in a tragic accident he partly blamed himself for, had fundamentally altered him. He'd thrown himself into work with relentless focus, building the Caldwell empire into an untouchable fortress, but simultaneously constructing impenetrable walls around his own heart. Relationships became transactional, emotions liabilities. He had few close friends as loyal, pragmatic lawyer, David Lee, who handled the complexities of his estate and business dealings, and Isabel Rossi, a sharp, inquisitive investigative journalist he'd known since college, whose cynical worldview sometimes mirrored his own, though she occasionally tried to coax him out of his self-imposed exile. He lived alone in a sprawling, sterile penthouse filled with expensive art he rarely looked at, the silence often broken only by the hum of servers processing global market data. Philadelphia, his city, reflected the stark contrasts of his own life. Gleaming skyscrapers housing corporate giants like Caldwell Enterprises cast long shadows over neighborhoods struggling with poverty, homelessness, and a quiet desperation Nathan usually chose to ignore, shielded by tinted windows and curated routes. He contributed generously to established charities, fulfilling a sense of detached civic duty, but remained removed from the human realities of the problems his checks addressed. He believed in systems, in efficiency, in controllable variables, things messy human lives rarely offered. The homeless crisis, the opioid epidemic, the struggles of vulnerable families, these were abstract data points, problems for committees and task forces, far removed from his world of quarterly earnings reports and strategic acquisitions. He hadn't intended to drive down that particular alley. He hadn't intended to stop. He certainly hadn't intended to confront a reality so raw, so immediate, embodied by a 12-year-old girl fiercely protecting an infant in a cardboard box, her selfless plea shattering the carefully maintained equilibrium of his detached existence. He was a man who controlled billions, yet felt utterly unprepared for the weight of responsibility suddenly thrust upon him by a child with nothing but a baby brother to her name. "I'll protect you both, Maisie," Nathan heard himself say, the name feeling right, instinctive, though he didn't know hers yet. He crouched down, shrugging off his expensive overcoat and gently draping it over the girl and the infant. "My name is Nathan. Let's get you somewhere warm. Somewhere safe." The girl Maisie looked at him, her eyes wide, searching his face for trustworthiness. She clutched the baby, Rowan, even tighter. "Where?" she whispered. "A hospital first," Nathan said gently but firmly. "To make sure Rowan is okay. And you too. Then we'll figure it out. I promise." Getting him in his car felt surreal. Maisie moved with a weary stiffness, never letting go of Rowan. Nathan drove carefully, ignoring the water and grime staining his car's plush leather seats, his mind racing. He called 911 again, updating them, requesting police meet him at Philadelphia General Hospital to make an official report, emphasizing the children appeared abandoned. Then he called David Lee. "David," he said, keeping his voice low so Maisie wouldn't overhear the alarm in it. "I need you. I'm heading to Philly General with 2 children, unaccompanied minors. Found them homeless. A girl, maybe 12, and an infant. Need you to handle whatever comes next, CPS, legal, all of it. Keep it quiet." David, accustomed to Nathan's occasional eccentricities but recognizing the unusual gravity in his tone, promised to be there immediately. At the hospital, the emergency department buzzed into action. Rowan was whisked away for examination, Maisie clinging to Nathan's hand until a kind nurse reassured her she could stay nearby. Doctors determined Rowan was suffering from mild malnutrition and dehydration, but was otherwise unharmed. Maisie was exhausted, undernourished, and had a low-grade fever, but her fierce protectiveness had clearly kept Rowan relatively safe. As the medical team worked, the expected bureaucratic machinery began to turn. A hospital social worker appeared, clipboard in hand, asking gentle but probing questions. Police officers took Nathan's statement. The assumption was clear. Nathan was the concerned citizen who found them, and now the authorities would take over, placing the children into the overloaded foster care system. But watching Maisie's anxious eyes follow Rowan's every move, remembering her selfless plea in the alley, Nathan felt an unexpected, fierce resolve solidify within him. Handing them over to the system felt like another abandonment. He thought of his sister, of his own profound loss, of the protective instincts he'd buried for years. When a social worker began explaining the process for emergency foster placement, Nathan interrupted politely but firmly. "That won't be necessary," he stated, his voice calm, but leaving no room for argument. The social worker and police officers stared at him, stunned. "Ms. Sanchez," he addressed the social worker, "I understand the procedures. My lawyer, David Lee, is on his way to coordinate with Child Protective Services regarding temporary guardianship. Until suitable, safe, long-term arrangements are confirmed, these children will be under my personal care." His declaration, so contrary to his known aloofness, was the true inciting incident. It wasn't just finding the children. It was his conscious, stunning decision to take personal responsibility for them. His initial goal became clear: ensure Maisie and Rowan's immediate and ongoing safety and well-being under his direct supervision, shielding them from the impersonal system while figuring out their past. His reaction was a blend of shock at his own impulsiveness, a daunting sense of responsibility, and a flicker of something long dormant: a connection, a purpose beyond balance sheets and boardrooms. The following days were a logistical and emotional whirlwind unlike anything Nathan Caldwell had ever experienced. David Lee, initially surprised but ultimately supportive, worked tirelessly, navigating the complex legalities of temporary custody with CPS, who were understandably skeptical of a billionaire suddenly taking in homeless children. Nathan's wealth and influence smoothed some pathways, but also invited scrutiny. He had to undergo background checks, home studies conducted in a secure, family-friendly apartment he quickly leased and furnished, knowing his penthouse was unsuitable, and endless interviews. He also called Isabel Rossi. "Izzy," he said, "I need your help, off the record for now. I have 2 children here, Maisie, 12, and baby Rowan. Found them abandoned. Can you see if any missing persons reports match? See if anyone is looking for them." Isabel, intrigued by the uncharacteristic request, agreed to investigate discreetly. Nathan hired a highly recommended background check pediatric nurse and a gentle, experienced nanny to provide round-the-clock care at the apartment, ensuring the children's physical needs were met professionally. He himself, however, found himself drawn to the apartment constantly, rearranging his demanding schedule at Caldwell Enterprises, delegating more than ever before. Maisie remained wary, watchful. She rarely spoke unless necessary, her attention always centered on Rowan. She observed Nathan with intelligent, assessing eyes, clearly unsure what to make of this quiet, wealthy man who had inexplicably taken them in. She refused the expensive toys Nathan initially bought, clinging instead to the worn blanket Rowan had been wrapped in. Nathan, awkward and inexperienced with children beyond brief interactions, followed the advice of the nurse and nanny. He didn't push Maisie to talk. He created routines, regular meal times, quiet playtimes. He started reading board books aloud to Rowan, his deep voice surprisingly soothing. He noticed Maisie listening intently from the doorway. One afternoon, he brought home potting soil and seeds, setting up small pots on the apartment balcony. He showed Maisie, wordlessly, how to plant marigold seeds. To his surprise, she joined him, her small hands carefully patting the soil, a flicker of concentration replacing the usual caution in her eyes. It was their first shared activity, a silent understanding beginning to bloom. Complications arose quickly. CPS, while granting temporary custody under strict supervision, made it clear they were actively searching for relatives or a permanent placement. The clock was ticking on Nathan's unconventional arrangement. Isabel Rossi's initial searches yielded nothing. No missing children reports matched Maisie and Rowan. It was as if they had simply ceased to exist before Nathan found them. Furthermore, Nathan's abrupt shift in priorities didn't go unnoticed at Caldwell Enterprises. Rumors began circulating. Board members questioned his focus. The financial press picked up whispers of the CEO's mysterious personal situation. Nathan ignored the speculation, focusing on the children, but the pressure added another layer of stress. The biggest complication, however, was Maisie's deep-seated trauma. Loud noises made her jump. Strangers, even the kind nurses, initially sent her retreating into silence. Nightmares often left her waking in quiet terror, though she refused to cry out, simply checking on Rowan before curling back into herself. Nathan realized that providing food and shelter wasn't enough. These children carried invisible wounds. He arranged for a highly recommended child trauma specialist to begin gentle, play-based therapy sessions with Maisie at the apartment. Amidst the legal hurdles, corporate whispers, and the slow process of building trust, Nathan felt his carefully ordered world tilting on its axis. He was navigating unfamiliar territory, driven by an impulse he didn't fully understand, facing obstacles far more complex than market fluctuations. The stakes were clear: the immediate future of two vulnerable children, the stability of his own life and company, and the growing, unsettling realization that this act of intervention might irrevocably change him. Just as a fragile sense of routine began to settle in the apartment, Child Protective Services delivered unexpected, jarring news. They had located the children's biological father, Marcus Thorne. Thorne, previously unknown to the system and apparently having only recently learned of the children's situation, likely through CPS's mandated search efforts, was asserting his parental rights and demanding immediate custody. The news hit Nathan like a physical blow. He had begun to feel fiercely protective of Maisie and Rowan. The thought of handing them over to an unknown father who had clearly abandoned them filling him with dread. David Lee immediately filed legal objections, citing abandonment and requesting a thorough investigation into Thorne's fitness as a parent, buying them some time. The turning point, however, came not from the legal system, but from Maisie herself. The mention of her father's name triggered a visible terror in her. That evening, after Rowan was asleep, Maisie sought Nathan out, clutching a worn, slightly misshapen stuffed rabbit she'd recently allowed herself to accept from him. "Mr. Nathan," she began, her voice barely a whisper, trembling. "CPS, they said my father wants us back." Nathan knelt beside her chair. "Yes, Maisie, but David and I are making sure you and Rowan stay safe. We need to know about him. Can you tell me anything?" Tears welled in Maisie's eyes, the first Nathan had seen her shed. "He left us," she choked out, "in the alley. He drove away. He said we were baggage. Said he had business and couldn't be watched." She took a shuddering breath. "Before that I heard him. On the phone. Always angry. Talking about money, about hiding things. He called the men he talked to the Black Widow." Black Widow. The name resonated with Nathan, not from finance, but from briefings provided by Isabel Rossi and his own corporate security team about emerging organized crime threats in the region. A shadowy syndicate involved in smuggling, extortion, money laundering. Could Maisie's father be connected? And Maisie continued, her voice even lower. "He told me if anyone ever asked, especially police, I shouldn't say anything. He said he'd find me. That bad things happen to girls who talk too much." The pieces clicked into a horrifying new configuration. Marcus Thorne hadn't just abandoned his children out of neglect. He had likely done it deliberately to facilitate his criminal activities, possibly because he was under surveillance or needed to disappear quickly. And now, with CPS locating him, he wanted the children back not out of love, but potentially as a shield, a way to appear legitimate, or worse, to silence Maisie permanently if he feared what she might have overheard. This revelation fundamentally changed the game. Nathan realized they weren't just fighting a neglectful parent in family court. They were dealing with a dangerous criminal potentially linked to organized crime. The stakes escalated dramatically. Protecting Maisie and Rowan now meant not just providing a home, but actively working to expose their father's criminality to ensure he could never reclaim them. Nathan's goal shifted from temporary guardian to proactive defender and investigator. He immediately contacted Isabel Rossi and David Lee. "Forget just checking Thorne's background," he told them urgently. "We need to dig into everything. His financials, his known associates, any connection to Black Widow. We need proof he's unfit, proof he's dangerous, before that custody hearing." The point of no return had been crossed. Nathan was now committed to unmasking Marcus Thorne, whatever the cost. The team Nathan providing resources and strategic direction, David Lee handling the legal front, Isabel Rossi leading the investigation, mobilized with renewed focus. Isabel leveraged her contacts, including sources within law enforcement cybercrime units, to scrutinize Marcus Thorne's digital footprint and financial activities. David Lee filed motions in family court demanding Thorne undergo extensive psychological evaluations and financial disclosure, citing concern for the children's safety based on Maisie's statements about abandonment and overheard criminal references. Isabel's investigation quickly bore fruit. She uncovered a network of shell corporations linked to Thorne, showing patterns of suspicious cash flow consistent with money laundering. More significantly, she found direct wire transfers between Thorne's accounts and known fronts for Silas Vance's Black Widow syndicate, using the established crime boss name. Cross-referencing timelines, she discovered Thorne had received a large payment from a Black Widow account just days before Maisie and Rowan were abandoned, suggesting he was paid off or needed to vanish quickly. Isabel also found evidence Thorne had recently booked, then canceled one-way international flights around the time he ditched the children. While Isabel gathered external evidence, Nathan focused on helping Maisie process her fragmented memories in her therapy sessions, hoping she might recall something useful. The trauma therapist, Dr. Ramirez, used drawing and storytelling techniques. During one session, while drawing a map of places she remembered being with her father, Maisie sketched a distinctive building near the Philadelphia shipyards, a large, old brick warehouse with a unique faded mural on one wall. "Daddy went there sometimes," she murmured. "Told me to wait in the car." Men with angry faces came out. Nathan immediately recognized the potential significance. He relayed the description and Maisie's sketch to Isabel. Isabel, cross-referencing Port Authority records and satellite imagery, identified a specific abandoned warehouse in a run-down industrial area matching Maisie's drawing. It was listed under one of Thorne's shell corporations. They now had a potential location for Thorne's criminal operations, strong financial links to Black Widow, and a clearer picture of his motives for abandoning and now attempting to reclaim his children. The regrouping involved consolidating this evidence for both the custody case and for law enforcement. David Lee prepared to introduce the financial evidence and Maisie's testimony about the warehouse and Black Widow references in the custody hearing, arguing Thorne posed an active danger. Isabel compiled her findings into a comprehensive dossier, including Maisie's sketch and delivered it to her high-level contacts within the FBI's Organized Crime Division, urging them to investigate the warehouse location urgently. Their new, integrated strategy was clear. Use the custody hearing as a legal battleground to strip Thorne of his parental rights based on endangerment and abandonment, while simultaneously feeding intelligence to law enforcement to trigger a criminal investigation that could neutralize Thorne and his Black Widow ties permanently. Nathan knew putting Maisie through a custody battle would be hard, but seemed the only way to legally guarantee her and Rowan's safety from their father. He doubled the security around the apartment and focused on providing Maisie with unwavering support, preparing her with Dr. Ramirez's guidance for the possibility of having to speak in court. Marcus Thorne, realizing Nathan Caldwell wasn't just a meddling billionaire, but a formidable opponent armed with top lawyers and investigators, began to fight dirty. His legal team filed countermotions, accusing Nathan of emotional manipulation and attempting to buy the children, demanding restricted visitation for Thorne under minimal supervision. They submitted character references, likely coerced or bought, attesting to Thorne's supposed stability. During one court-ordered, supervised visit at a neutral location, Thorne tried to intimidate Maisie. Leaning close when the supervisor was momentarily distracted, he whispered menacingly, "You keep your mouth shut about what you heard, girl. You tell that billionaire anything else, and bad things will happen. Remember what I said about girls who talk too much." Maisie, though terrified, didn't respond, later recounting the threat tearfully to Nathan and her therapist, further strengthening their case about Thorne's unfitness, but also highlighting the real danger she was in. Isabel Rossi faced her own challenges. Her law enforcement contacts confirmed the warehouse Maisie identified was under surveillance, showing activity consistent with smuggling operations, likely linked to Black Widow. However, building a case strong enough for a raid warrant required more than just surveillance and financial links. They needed concrete evidence of ongoing criminal activity inside. Isabel pushed her sources, risking exposure, trying to find an informant or trigger an undercover buy. Nathan felt the pressure intensely. The custody hearing date loomed. While David Lee felt confident they could win based on abandonment and Thorne's clear instability, Nathan worried about Maisie having to testify against her father and the lingering threat Thorne posed even if he lost custody. What if Thorne retaliated? What if Black Widow decided Nathan himself was a problem? The weight of responsibility for the children's safety, combined with the legal battle and the underlying criminal threat, created Nathan's dark night. He found himself pacing his penthouse late at night, the silence amplifying his fears, questioning the wisdom of his impulsive decision in the alley. Had he inadvertently put Maisie and Rowan in even greater danger? His resolve was tested but ultimately held, solidified by Maisie's quiet courage and Rowan's trusting gaze. He doubled down, authorizing David Lee to spare no expense on legal preparations and providing Isabel with whatever resources she needed to accelerate the criminal investigation. He also finalized contingency plans, preparing secure relocation options for Maisie and Rowan immediately following the hearing, regardless of the outcome of any potential police action against Thorne. The final preparations focused on the custody hearing as the immediate battleground. David Lee prepped Maisie carefully with Dr. Ramirez, focusing on telling the truth simply and clearly. Isabel provided David with the latest financial evidence linking Thorne directly to illicit Black Widow funds. They confirmed law enforcement would be discreetly present in the courthouse, ready to act if Thorne became violent or if new evidence emerged triggering immediate probable cause for arrest related to the warehouse investigation. Everyone braced themselves for the confrontation, knowing the outcome would determine the children's future and potentially unleash dangerous repercussions. The atmosphere in the family courtroom was heavy with tension. Marcus Thorne sat beside his lawyer, attempting an expression of wronged fatherhood, but his eyes darted nervously. Nathan sat with David Lee, calm on the surface, his gaze fixed on the judge. Isabel Rossi was present in the public gallery, ostensibly as a reporter covering the high-profile custody dispute. Thorne's lawyer presented his case first, portraying Thorne as a struggling single father temporarily overwhelmed, now stable and eager to reclaim his children from the clutches of a wealthy interloper. It was a weak argument, easily dismantled by David Lee, who presented documented evidence of Thorne's abandonment, his lack of contact, and his failure to provide any support. The pivotal moment came when Maisie was called to testify via closed-circuit video from a separate room, accompanied by Dr. Ramirez. Her voice was small but steady as David Lee gently questioned her. She recounted being left in the alley, her father driving away. She described his anger, his secret phone calls, mentioning the Black Widow name and the warehouse near the docks. She recounted his threat during the supervised visit. He said, "Bad things happen to girls who talk too much." Maisie concluded, her lower lip trembling slightly. "I don't want to go with him. I want to stay with Mr. Nathan. He keeps us safe. He reads to Rowan." Thorne erupted, shouting, "She's lying." He coached her. That billionaire dash. The judge slammed her gavel, silencing him. Just as Thorne's lawyer began a desperate attempt at cross-examination, Isabel Rossi received a text message. She discreetly signaled David Lee, who requested a brief recess, citing new, urgent evidence. During the recess, Isabel confirmed the news. Acting on intelligence, likely corroborated by evidence presented in the hearing itself, Maisie's testimony about the warehouse. The FBI had just executed a raid on the suspected warehouse. They found significant quantities of smuggled goods, illegal firearms, and, crucially, ledgers and encrypted hard drives directly linking Marcus Thorne to the Black Widow smuggling operation and detailing plans to use potential custody of his children as a way to appear legitimate and avoid law enforcement scrutiny. When court reconvened, David Lee presented this information to the judge. Simultaneously, federal agents entered the courtroom. Marcus Thorne, an agent, announced, approaching the respondent's table, "You are under arrest for federal smuggling charges, conspiracy, and child endangerment." Thorne stared in disbelief as he was handcuffed and led away, his facade of aggrieved fatherhood collapsing in his stunned silence. The judge immediately terminated Thorne's parental rights and granted permanent guardianship of Maisie and Rowan to Nathan Caldwell. Justice, both familial and criminal, had been delivered. Marcus Thorne's arrest and subsequent conviction dismantled a significant smuggling operation linked to the Black Widow syndicate in Philadelphia. His conviction on multiple felonies, including child abandonment and endangerment, ensured he would pose no further threat to Maisie and Rowan. The successful raid provided authorities with valuable intelligence, leading to further investigations into Black Widow's network. With the legal battles over and Thorne imprisoned, Nathan formally adopted Maisie and Rowan, legally becoming their father. The transition was seamless, as they had already become a family in heart and home. The apartment Nathan had leased became their permanent, warm, laughter-filled residence, a stark contrast to his former solitary penthouse existence. He hired a loving, permanent nanny but remained deeply involved, cherishing school pickups, bedtime stories, and weekend adventures. The experience profoundly changed Nathan. Witnessing Maisie's resilience and Rowan's innocent trust cracked open the emotional fortress he had built around himself. He found a depth of fulfillment in fatherhood he hadn't known was possible. This shift rippled outwards into his professional life. He restructured Caldwell Enterprises' philanthropic arm, establishing the Maisie's Hope Initiative, a major foundation dedicated to funding shelters, educational programs, and legal aid for homeless youth and families, with Isabel Rossi agreeing to serve on its board, channeling her journalistic passion into advocacy. David Lee provided pro bono legal counsel for the foundation. Philadelphia society, initially stunned by Nathan's actions, eventually came to admire his transformation from reclusive billionaire to dedicated father and philanthropist. Isabel Rossi wrote a compelling, anonymized series about the intersection of homelessness, organized crime, and unlikely saviors, sparking community dialogue. One sunny afternoon, Nathan watched Maisie, now 13 and thriving, patiently showing a 2-year-old Rowan how to water the flowers on their balcony, the same marigolds Nathan had taught her plant. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by the bright confidence of a secure, loved child. Nathan felt a profound sense of peace. He hadn't just rescued 2 children from a cardboard box. They, in their innocence and resilience, had rescued him from his own self-imposed isolation, filling his life with purpose, laughter, and unconditional love. The billionaire had found his true fortune, not on a balance sheet, but in the simple, powerful bonds of a found family.